Have you ever wondered why some people keep crossing your boundaries no matter how kind, patient, or understanding you are? Why they speak to you differently than they speak to others? The painful truth is this: disrespect rarely begins with their words. It begins with what your silence teaches them. Today, I want to share one simple shift. You only need to do it once, not with anger, not with revenge, but with unwavering inner certainty. When you truly understand this principle, toxic people will no longer see you as someone they can control. They may not like you, but they will learn to respect you. Many people believe that disrespect begins with another person's behavior. They think the problem starts when someone raises their voice, ignores their opinion, interrupts them, manipulates them, or treats them as if they have little value. But if you observe human nature carefully, you will notice something deeper. Disrespect rarely appears all at once. It begins as a small test. Someone speaks to you in a way that feels slightly uncomfortable. Someone dismisses your time. Someone crosses a boundary that should have been obvious. In that moment, they are not simply expressing themselves. They are observing you. They are silently asking one question: what will this person allow? Your response becomes the answer they remember. Xiu, xiwai, qiwan. This is why self-respect is so important. Self-respect is not loud. It does not require arrogance or aggression. It is a quiet certainty that says, I know my value and I will not trade it for acceptance. The moment you abandon this certainty, even for the sake of keeping peace, you unknowingly teach others that your comfort is negotiable. You begin sacrificing pieces of yourself, hoping your kindness will be appreciated. But kindness without boundaries is often mistaken for weakness by those who only understand power. There is a great difference between being compassionate and being available for mistreatment. Compassion comes from strength. It is a conscious choice to meet others with patience. But when compassion turns into constant self-sacrifice, it is no longer compassion. It becomes fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. Many people remain silent not because they agree with disrespect, but because they are afraid that speaking up will cost them relationships. Yet a relationship that requires you to lose your dignity in order to keep it has already become a prison. Look closely at nature. A mountain does not announce its strength. A great tree does not argue with the wind about its worth. They simply remain rooted. Their presence alone commands respect. Human beings are no different. When your values are deeply rooted, you no longer feel the need to convince others that you deserve kindness. You naturally expect it because you first give it to yourself. Toxic people often recognize insecurity long before you recognize it yourself. They notice hesitation. They notice when you apologize for things that require no apology. They notice when you constantly seek approval before making decisions. They notice when your yes comes from fear rather than genuine willingness. Every unnecessary compromise becomes an invitation for another one. Every ignored discomfort becomes permission for greater disrespect. This does not mean becoming cold or suspicious of everyone. It means becoming deeply honest with yourself. Ask yourself simple questions. Why do I remain silent when something feels wrong? Why do I accept treatment that I would never encourage someone I love to accept? Why do I believe keeping everyone comfortable is more important than protecting my own peace? These questions are uncomfortable, but they reveal where your self-respect has quietly been abandoned. The truth is that people learn how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. If you constantly minimize your own needs, others eventually will too. If you tolerate what violates your values, others assume your values are flexible. But when your actions consistently reflect quiet self-respect, something remarkable happens. Those who genuinely value you will feel safe because your character is clear. Those who seek control will become uncomfortable because they realize there are limits they cannot cross. Everything changes the moment you stop asking the world to recognize your worth and begin living as though it has never been in question. Once you begin respecting yourself, another challenge will appear. It is the temptation to explain yourself to everyone. Many people believe that if they can just find the right words, the right tone, or the right argument, they will finally be understood. They spend hours defending their choices, justifying their boundaries, and trying to convince people that their intentions are good. But there is a painful truth that must be accepted. Not everyone misunderstands you by accident. Some people misunderstand you on purpose because your explanation gives them something they can reshape, question, or use against you. Toxic people rarely seek clarity, they seek control. They are not interested in discovering the truth, they are interested in keeping you emotionally engaged. Every long explanation becomes another opportunity for them to interrupt, criticize, twist your words, or move the conversation away from the real issue. Before long, you are no longer discussing your boundary. You are defending your personality, your motives, your past, and eventually even your own memory. This is how manipulation quietly unfolds. It begins with a simple conversation and ends with you questioning yourself. Observe confident people. They do not waste energy trying to make everyone agree with them. They understand something that many never learn. Understanding cannot be forced. Respect cannot be negotiated through endless conversations. Some people will only understand your absence after they ignored your words. Others will only understand your silence after they have exhausted every attempt to provoke a reaction. This is why silence is so powerful. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness because people confuse quietness with surrender. But there is a kind of silence that carries enormous strength. It is the silence of someone who has already made peace with their decision. It is the silence that refuses to participate in unnecessary conflict. It is the silence that says, I have nothing left to prove. Notice how often people explain themselves because they fear being disliked. They think, if I can just help them understand me, they won't be angry. But trying to control another person's opinion is one of the fastest ways to lose control over your own peace. No matter how carefully you speak, there will always be someone determined to hear something else. If another person's judgment can be changed only by your constant explanations, then your peace becomes dependent on their approval. That is a dangerous place to live. This does not mean becoming indifferent or refusing healthy communication. Honest conversations are necessary with people who genuinely care. When someone asks questions because they wish to understand, your openness strengthens the relationship. But there is a difference between explaining yourself once and defending yourself endlessly. Wisdom knows where that line exists. Pay attention to your own body during these conversations. When you begin repeating yourself, when your heart races because you desperately want to be believed, when you feel exhausted after every interaction with the same person, ask yourself a simple question. Am I communicating or am I seeking permission to live according to my values? The answer often reveals more than the conversation itself. The strongest boundary is not always spoken. Sometimes it is the decision to stop participating in arguments that lead nowhere. Sometimes it is allowing another person to keep their opinion without feeling compelled to correct it. Sometimes it is accepting that being misunderstood is far less damaging than betraying yourself in the attempt to be understood. There is great freedom in realizing that your life is your explanation. Your consistency speaks louder than your defense. Your actions carry more weight than your arguments. The people who truly belong in your life will observe your character over time, and they will not require endless persuasion to recognize your sincerity. The less you need to explain who you are, the more clearly your true strength begins to reveal itself. There comes a moment in every person's life when reflection and understanding are no longer enough. You may recognize unhealthy patterns. You may understand why certain people continue to disrespect you. You may even promise yourself that things will change. But if your understanding never becomes action, nothing in your life truly changes. This is why one clear decision made only once and honored consistently has more power than 100 emotional conversations. Toxic people are not transformed by your intentions, they respond to your actions. Many people think boundaries must be repeated over and over again. They believe that if someone crosses the line, they should explain it once more, give another warning, offer another chance, and hope that this time the message will be understood. But every repeated warning without consequence slowly loses its meaning. Imagine a door that has a lock but is never used. Eventually, everyone learns that the lock is only decoration. Boundaries work the same way. They are not defined by what you say. They are defined by what you consistently protect. Or this does not require anger. In fact, anger often weakens a boundary because it shifts the focus from your values to your emotions. A calm decision carries far greater weight than an emotional reaction. When you say, I will not accept being spoken to in that way, and then quietly leave the conversation if it continues, you have already taught more than any long explanation ever could. You did not raise your voice. You did not seek revenge. You simply aligned your actions with your words. The first time you do this, it will feel uncomfortable. Your Your mind may begin creating stories. What if they think I am rude? What if I lose this relationship? What if they become angry? These fears are natural because most people have been conditioned to believe that maintaining harmony is more important than maintaining integrity. But ask yourself this: what kind of harmony exists when your peace depends on accepting disrespect? That is not harmony, it is silent suffering. Toxic people often rely on one powerful assumption that eventually you will give in. They have watched you compromise before. They have seen you return after every insult, every broken promise, every violation of trust. They are not testing your patience anymore. They are testing your consistency. If your answer changes every time pressure is applied, they learn that persistence will eventually overcome your boundaries. Consistency is what changes the dynamic. The first boundary may surprise them. The second may frustrate them. The third teaches them that this is no longer a negotiation. At that point, something remarkable happens. Either they begin treating you differently or they begin distancing themselves because they no longer receive the control they once enjoyed. In both cases, you have gained something valuable: peace. Remember, a boundary is not an attempt to control another person's behavior. You cannot force someone to become respectful, honest, or kind. Their character belongs to them. A boundary simply defines what access they have to your life if they choose not to act with respect. This understanding removes unnecessary conflict. You stop trying to change people, and instead you change what you are willing to participate in. There is also great wisdom in making your boundary simple. The more complicated it becomes, the easier it is to negotiate. A simple boundary leaves little room for confusion. If someone repeatedly lies to you, you stop trusting them with important matters. If someone constantly insults you, you end the conversation. If someone repeatedly ignores your limits, you reduce their access to your time and energy. There is no drama in this. There is only clarity. Over time, you will notice something unexpected. Setting boundaries does not make your life smaller. It makes your relationships healthier. The people who genuinely care about you will not resent your self-respect. They may need time to adjust, but they will recognize the honesty behind it. Those who only valued your willingness to tolerate mistreatment will reveal themselves through their resistance. One clear decision, honored every single time, can accomplish what years of pleading never could. Once you establish clear boundaries, another lesson becomes essential. A boundary protects your space, but emotional mastery protects your mind. Many people believe they have won simply because they stood up for themselves once. Yet toxic individuals often do not stop when they meet resistance. Instead, they change their strategy. If they can no longer control your actions, they will try to control your emotions. They will provoke you, criticize you, accuse you of changing, or even portray themselves as the victim. Their goal is simple: to pull you back into a state where you react instead of choosing your response. This is why emotional stillness is such a rare form of strength. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel everything without allowing those feelings to become your master. There is a great difference between experiencing anger and becoming anger. There is a great difference between feeling hurt and allowing that hurt to dictate your next decision. Most conflicts become destructive not because emotions exist, but because emotions are allowed to lead. Observe what happens when someone insults you. The words enter your ears, but the reaction begins inside your own mind. Within seconds, memories appear. Old wounds awaken. Your heart beats faster. Your body prepares for battle. In that moment, you feel an urgent desire to defend yourself, to strike back with words, or to prove the other person wrong. Yet this is exactly the moment when your greatest power is available. Not because you suppress your emotions, but because you refuse to let them make your decisions. Think of a calm lake. When the water is still, it reflects everything with clarity. But when it is constantly disturbed, even the brightest sky becomes distorted. The human mind works in the same way. When your emotions are constantly agitated, you lose the ability to see people and situations as they truly are. You begin reacting to assumptions instead of reality. You answer imagined attacks instead of actual words. You create suffering that extends far beyond the original moment. Toxic people understand this, even if only unconsciously. They know that an emotionally reactive person is easier to manipulate than a calm one. If they can make you angry, they no longer need to defend their own behavior because your reaction becomes the new topic of discussion. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about their disrespect. It becomes about your tone, your frustration, or your response. The focus quietly shifts away from their actions and toward your emotions. This is why inner discipline is more valuable than verbal victory. Winning an argument while losing your peace is not a victory. The strongest person in the room is often the one who feels no urgency to dominate the conversation. They listen carefully. They speak only what is necessary. They refuse to compete in emotional chaos. Their calmness is not passive, it is intentional. It comes from understanding that every reaction carries a cost and not every situation deserves that price. Many people mistake this for emotional distance, but it is quite the opposite. Emotional stillness allows you to stay fully present without being consumed by the moment. You become capable of recognizing another person's pain without absorbing it. You hear criticism without immediately believing it. You receive praise without becoming dependent on it. Your inner world is no longer controlled by every opinion that passes through your life. This kind of steadiness is built through practice. It begins with small moments, taking one conscious breath before speaking, allowing silence to exist without rushing to fill it, asking yourself, will my next words create clarity or simply release tension? These simple pauses may seem insignificant, but they slowly transform your entire way of living. Instead of becoming a prisoner of impulse, you become the author of your response. People will notice the change. Some will become confused because the version of you they once knew reacted instantly. Others may push harder, hoping to awaken the old patterns. But if your calm remains consistent, they eventually realize there is nothing left to manipulate. They can no longer borrow your emotions to fuel their control. The greatest strength is not found in overpowering another person. It is found in remaining unmoved by the storms they try to create within you. There is one fear that keeps countless people trapped in unhealthy relationships, unhealthy friendships, and unhealthy environments. It is not the fear of being hurt, it is the fear of losing someone. Because of this fear, people tolerate words they should never accept, behaviors they should never excuse, and patterns they know will never change. They convince themselves that enduring disrespect is better than facing loneliness, yet they fail to recognize that living without self-respect is a far deeper form of loneliness than standing alone with peace in your heart. The ability to walk away is not about rejecting people. It is about refusing to reject yourself. There is an important difference. Many imagine walking away as a dramatic act filled with anger, resentment, or revenge. But true detachment has nothing to do with punishing another person. It is a quiet decision that says, I can care about you without allowing you to harm me. I can wish you well without giving you unlimited access to my life. This is difficult because the human mind naturally clings to familiarity. Even painful relationships can become comfortable simply because they are predictable. You know what to expect. You know the cycle. There is conflict, then apology, then hope, then disappointment, and the cycle begins again. Over time, this pattern starts to feel normal. Many people mistake familiarity for love when in reality they have simply become accustomed to emotional instability. Walking away interrupts this cycle. It is not only a physical act, it is an inner transformation. It means releasing the belief that your worth depends on someone else's acceptance. It means understanding that not every relationship is meant to be repaired. Some relationships exist only to teach you where your boundaries should have been all along. Notice how toxic people often react when they realize you are no longer emotionally dependent on them. At first, they may become unusually kind. They may promise to change. They may remind you of the good memories you shared together. If that does not work, they may become angry. They may accuse you of becoming selfish, cold, or ungrateful. This sudden shift is revealing. It often has little to do with losing you as a person and much more to do with losing the influence they once had over you. If your peace disappears every time someone threatens to leave, then your peace was never truly yours. It was borrowed from another person's presence. Real freedom begins when you understand that your emotional stability cannot be built upon circumstances you cannot control. People will come, people will go, opinions will change, seasons of life will change. But if your inner foundation remains rooted in your own values, you no longer fear these changes in the same way. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you realize you can survive disappointment. Many people underestimate their own resilience. They imagine that losing a relationship will destroy them, only to discover months later that they have become stronger, wiser, and more peaceful than they ever thought possible. Often, the very door you feared closing was preventing you from seeing all the doors waiting to open. Or this does not mean abandoning people at the first sign of difficulty. Every meaningful relationship requires patience, forgiveness, and honest communication. But there is a profound difference between working through mutual challenges and repeatedly accepting one-sided disrespect. One builds trust, the other slowly destroys your spirit. Ask yourself this question whenever you hesitate to leave a harmful situation. Am I staying because this relationship helps me grow, or because I am afraid of what life looks like without it? That single question has the power to expose many hidden attachments. Fear often disguises itself as loyalty, but loyalty without wisdom becomes self-betrayal. When you become comfortable with the possibility of walking away, something remarkable happens. You stop negotiating from desperation. You stop chasing people who repeatedly choose not to value your presence. You stop trying to convince others to appreciate what they have already taken for granted. Instead, you begin living with quiet confidence, knowing that your peace is worth protecting. The moment you no longer fear losing the wrong people is the moment they lose the power to control you. In the end, the greatest response to disrespect is not a perfect sentence, a clever argument, or a dramatic farewell. It is the life you choose to build after you stop giving your energy to those who never deserved it. Many people spend years trying to prove their worth to individuals who have already decided not to see it. They believe that one more achievement, one more sacrifice, or one more explanation will finally earn the respect they have been seeking. But respect that depends on constant performance is never true respect. It is approval, and approval disappears the moment you stop pleasing others. There is something deeply liberating about realizing that your purpose is not to convince the world of your value. Your purpose is to live in such a way that your character speaks before your words ever do. When your actions consistently reflect honesty, discipline, kindness, and self-respect, you no longer feel the urge to announce who you are. People may misunderstand your silence, but over time, they cannot misunderstand your consistency. Think about those individuals whose presence immediately brings a sense of calm. They rarely speak the loudest. They rarely compete for attention. They do not chase admiration. Yet people naturally listen when they speak. Why? Because their lives have become evidence of their principles. Every decision they make reflects the same inner foundation. There is no conflict between what they say and what they do. This kind of integrity cannot be manufactured overnight. It is built quietly, one choice at a time. Many people underestimate the influence of quiet discipline, waking up each day and keeping your promises to yourself, speaking truthfully even when it is uncomfortable, refusing to gossip, taking responsibility for your mistakes instead of blaming others, protecting your peace without becoming bitter. These habits may seem ordinary, but together they create an extraordinary presence. Toxic people often rely on emotional instability, inconsistency, and self-doubt. When those qualities disappear from your life, they find very little they can manipulate. Do not measure your progress by whether difficult people suddenly become kind. Some never will. That is not your responsibility.